The goal of the organization is to create that strong network, but to join, you have to agree to our statement of beliefs,
Hmm.
which is somewhat of a political document. It shouldn't be, but it is in today's, stuff like trans rights or human rights, Black Lives Matter. You should be able to do what you want with your own body and love who you
Hmm.
love. And our actions have consequences. We should try to measure the impact of things we do and not waste our resources.
Yeah. Radical
And
stuff.
yeah, so radical.
Hey, Devin, how's it going?
Going just great. About you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Tuesday that feels like a Monday, but on we go. Can't really complain. So, before we get into all the fun stuff about what your org is up to and all things queer and business oriented, why don't you just give our viewers and listeners who aren't already familiar a little intro? Who are you? And then tell us about Trans Rally.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Devin Grayson. Nice to meet you. People who don't know, I guess. Hi. I run an organization called Trans Rally. I started it in June 15th last year. So we just about celebrated our 1 year anniversary. The goal of the organization, it's a membership organization for people who are transgender as well as allies of the trans community. And our goal is to empower our members economically, specifically in the short term, connecting people with well paying jobs and essentially creating a professional network of people who are unified under a common purpose, of which is to lift the trans community. Long term, we want to basically be a place that is able to give money to good organizations that are nonprofits, for profits, whatever, essentially trying to funnel money to those organizations so that we're able to basically build something and build a good community and a strong network, essentially, because that's what we need today. And I would
Yes.
say that started in, like I said, June 15th last year. We've grown just today, date of recording at least, we're at 240 members. So we've been growing pretty quickly. We're starting to grow exponentially as well because the end of February we had about 45 members.
Hmm.
And now we're starting to grow a lot quicker, which is great.
Nice.
And yeah.
Excellent. So before we get kind of more into facts about Trans Rally, how that started, what happens in it, just to kind of get to a bigger subject here. So obviously, this podcast is about uh, queer success, basically, right? Queer success stories and keeping away from the we had to overcome something and to get where we are and the struggle and the trauma story, which is a thing and exists and has its place as a story. But this is really about people who got to where they are because of their queerness, right? Because of some strength or some kind of aspect it brought out in them. So, first of all, queer is one of those words where we all say it and we all probably mean something at least a little bit different, no matter who you ask and no matter what scenario we're talking about specifically. So, me knowing that for me, it's something that's a little beyond just sexuality or gender identity or something like that. There's some kind of intentional disruption to it. There's something that's reclaimed about it, right? It used to be a slur.
Yeah.
And having been someone who has who had been called it as a slur before I even was willing to own that I was what was being called out. It's a powerful reclamation, but it's not just a reclamation of like, oh yeah, because I like certain kinds of people, right? It's a really like an intentional, like I'm going to reclaim this and I'm going to turn it back against the kind of places, people, things, entities, right, that are oppressing us in the first place. So for me, it's an intentional disruption. It's more of a lifestyle orientation than it is just a sexual orientation or a gender identity. But what about you? As we talk about queerness and the power of queerness, what does queer mean to you?
Sure. So, I'm transgender. My pronouns are they, them. Born male, or I guess assigned male at birth, and
Mm-hmm.
transitioning to a more feminine appearance in about 15 months under hormone replacement therapy.
Mhm.
You probably can't tell, but whatever. Uh, queer to me, it's almost kind of an umbrella term. And it's a little bit interesting because the initial definition of queer was just different.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what it means to me a little bit, in that, it's mostly geared towards sexuality, and mostly geared towards like romantic interest and everything, and something different than a heteronormative relationship.
Mhm.
But also, you're right, it does have kind of a cultural thing too. It's an interesting situation because for me, growing up, I grew up in Oklahoma, in a town called Edmond, which is basically like a white flight suburb of Oklahoma City. And people were very snooty. I always felt very different, from the people around me. For example, in 2008, whenever the election was happening with Obama versus McCain,
Mhm.
my gym teacher said, okay, who's voting for McCain and who's voting for Obama? Separate yourself. And then I was the only one to like go to for Obama. So it's an interesting thing because I've always felt different from my
Your
community.
gym
That
teacher?
my gym teacher, yeah,
What the fuck? Why? Like, why? What was?
it's Oklahoma, you know.
It is.
So they
It
just
is
try to
really.
bring weird politics into it. I think they're probably trying to brainwash people because all their parents were like McCain, McCain, McCain.
Yeah.
But
Mm. Okay.
yeah, and it's also interesting too because for me, it's not necessarily queer identity. It's also, I'm autistic and I have ADHD as
Mhm.
well. So I would honestly say that it's almost, labels are more of a descriptor for me versus an identity.
Mhm.
In that I'm Devin, and oh, I happen to be trans, I happen to be autistic, I happen to have ADHD, and it kind of colors my worldview in a different way, in
Yeah.
some ways. But that's basically what I would say. Um, Queer means to me. It's definitely a loaded term. A lot of people aren't comfortable with it, but a lot of people love it.
Yeah.
And I personally love it because I
Me,
love the queer community.
me too. Um, okay, so taking queer in the definition you mean, right? So like taking it, yeah, certainly it encompasses a few things.
Mhm.
It's the difference, it's the thing that sets apart. So in my version, there's an intentional nature to that, and maybe it's not so intentional. Some of it's just descriptive. But if
Yeah,
it's, like you just mentioned, right? So autism, ADHD, queerness, right? Like whatever these different factors that create an otherness, a total queerness. So how is that queerness helped as a professional, as someone coming up through school and entering, job markets and now starting to do your own thing? Like, forget about where it's been a struggle because the system was not built for us, because it fucking wasn't. We all know it wasn't. But where has it given you a certain strength or a certain advantage? How has queerness helped you in your journey?
sure. So, I mean, you said not to mention it, but it is something important because it is, kind of instrumental in the development of my life. It's been hard.
Yeah.
For me, haven't really gotten a ton of like overt negative interactions with people. It was
Okay.
more of an ostracization, more of a negative
Mm-hmm.
interaction instead of a positive interaction. And that's caused me to be alone, sort of essentially, since first or second grade all the way until college.
Mm-hmm.
And that has, colored my life in certain ways to kind of make me hard. And that hardness, I guess, is useful because
Mm-hmm.
you're able to kind of understand what really matters,
Mm-hmm.
and prioritize things. But in some ways, it's a negative too because it tends to kind of make you have a front and kind of a separation between people sometimes. And I would say that hardness and the kind of that calculating type of
Yeah.
thought has been very helpful in my career So
Hmm.
I started, in social work. I got a degree of a bachelor's of social work, and it's right there. I'm really proud of it,
Hmm.
um, because I think it's helped me understand societal issues more. Um, and the reason I went into social work instead of psychology in college was because psychology is like you have a brain problem, here's how to help that brain problem.
Hmm.
Whereas social work is you might have a brain problem, but also your surroundings are a huge factor in the
Yeah.
success of your life. But the field of social work generally is mostly psychology.
Hmm.
And the social work field that I think is quote unquote real social work is like community mental health,
Hmm.
case management, advocacy. And what you're doing in that is working 60 hours a week. And in Missouri, where I was going to school, University of Missouri, making 35 or $40,000 a year being on call.
Hmm.
And it's an exploitative industry as it
Yeah.
exists currently. And so I've always had a passion for personal finance. So I was like, okay, cool. Financial counseling is a thing. Finances are a big issue for people, with how basically they interact with the world and have support. And so I was able to transition into financial services, into sales, into operations. Now I'm in compliance. So I'm basically like Toby from The Office, telling financial advisors don't do that, which the hardness has helped too. Um,
Yeah.
but it's also it's just as an example, a tangible example, that experience of me understanding the important things in life, I was able to make a calculation and say, okay, social work is not a good field to work in currently
Hmm.
because of this.
Yeah.
And I was able to pivot that way
Hmm.
because I was like, here's the results of people who are in social work. Either you become a psychologist or a counselor and you're living a good life, or you do what I would like to do in social work and you live a very, very rough career.
Yeah.
Emotional labor, true labor, everything like that. So that's just an example, I guess, of the
Okay.
hardness and kind of harnessing that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there is a right there's a nuance to the question where most of the answers that people will come out with are some flip side of a difficulty,
Yeah,
because that's how people develop, for the most part, right? Is bouncing off of our environments, as you mentioned with the social work, right? There's like that's who we are is always just in this dance, kind of with the environment we're in, and
it's helpful for
being,
interviews too.
yes, yes. Yes. And yeah, and being othered, right, is going to produce certain things in people that weren't just there naturally, and that's no matter what kind, right? Alienation will produce something different in folks, and often there is a kind of that hardness, and often simultaneously like the empathy and compassion, right?
Yeah,
So like there's the hardness of responding to the world and having no illusions about what it might be trying to do at any given points, and then a compassion for the other humans, which is why so
yes.
many folks will end up in places like social work and stuff like that, even though there's no reward built in. This the overall system we're in doesn't pay that. It pays the finance folks, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
yeah.
I wanted to raise a
Yeah.
family and everything, and just the cost benefit analysis
Hmm.
aspect of it. It's just, you know, I was my thing was I can help people individually, and kind
Yeah.
of make a difference in people's lives. And then, things happened and Trans Rally, was created, and I could talk about that too.
Hmm.
So I kind of am doing social work on the side in some ways.
Right.
At least I see myself doing it.
Yeah. So let's hit that. So what is it then in that journey, and you're coming through and the social work, and it's like, oh shit, but I actually would like to make money and not burn out immediately.
Mhm.
And so then you go in this other direction, but then what is it that happens? So what is it that happened that spurred on the creation of Trans Rally?
Sure. So a few things. It was actually we were talking about this a little bit earlier with Reddit and all their API stuff
Hmm.
recently. But there was a Reddit comment, and I read that Reddit comment, and it said this was after January 6th. the riots and the attempted overthrow of our government
Mm-hmm.
on January 6th, which is also just crazy to think about that
Mm-hmm.
happened. But it was in 2025 on January 6th, if a Democratic president is elected, and everything's political here because my trans identity is political, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on that day, there might be efforts, either legally or extra legally, to not allow that president to be sit. And on that day, what will you do?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know what I'll do because I'm like working in an operations position at a brokerage firm, making sure money gets from point A to point B. The system's not breaking. And although like I'm handling hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions and I'm like making sure everything goes well, and that's a difference there, a
Mm-hmm.
small difference, but it's a
Yeah.
difference. It's not really doing anything substantively. And I
Mm-hmm.
have that social worker heart too. And so I'm like, okay, I got to do something. And then, the Dobbs decision came down last year and, basically ending Roe v. Wade. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, stuff is not happening 2 or 3 years from now. It's happening right now. I need to actually, literally, legitimately do something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, the idea of Trans Rally came. I was like, okay, I'll work on a part time. Didn't really, no movement on it really.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that impacted me the most was I came across someone named Devin,
Mm-hmm.
um, who lives in southern Georgia, is assigned male at birth like me, uses they, them, she, her pronouns, and lives in a town called Moultrie, Georgia. And their Facebook profile is not private, so
Mm-hmm.
you're able to kind of see posts. And it turns out that Dev passed away 2 or 3 years ago. And you can see the obituary on their Facebook profile. And the obituary basically erased this person's trans identity, saying he, him, brother, son,
Yeah.
and using a masculine image. And I'm like, okay, this person is named Devin, like
Mm-hmm.
me, signed male at birth, transitioning, lives in southern Georgia in a town called Moultrie. And to put a pin in it, my wife, a large portion of her family comes from Moultrie, Georgia. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not like a religious or spiritual person, but the chances of this happening are so low that I just need to make a difference, let's
Yeah.
just say. And I decided in May 18th or May 16th, even last year, to quit my job full time, to focus on Trans Rally. Plans went differently, I guess. I was able to focus on it full time for about 6 months
Mm-hmm.
to get the base build up. It's not a good financial decision. So I got another job in December as a compliance advisor
Mm-hmm.
for an organization out of Philadelphia. But I'm still running this. And in about January or February, I've started to kind of double down
Mm-hmm.
in 2023, which is why there's much more movement now too. But that's kind of the genesis of it. And with Dev, it's kind of to honor them and their memory,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also to try to provide a network and a social support to prevent that from happening in the future too.
Mm-hmm.
Because this person was receiving a lot of issues in hate in southern Georgia and was experiencing bouts of unemployment, which led to drug use and such. Um, and that's the reason why they passed away. But this happened 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not even happening today. It's happening. It's been happening.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of made me do this.
Yeah. It has been happening. So, what in all the time that you've been doing this so far, right, which has not been, in one sense, not been a long time, and then in another sense, has been a long time, right? Or maybe at times has felt like a longer time than it is, right? But you've got a community, and just this past calendar year, right, it's really started to kind of like expand and grow. What has been the most surprising thing to you about what you've heard from community members, right? What they've experienced, what they've come to you with, like what's one of the things that like you wouldn't have expected for this to be part of the equation, but it is.
Yeah, I would say what has surprised me is the willingness of people who are not transgender to support our community. So I
Yeah.
would say, we don't necessarily collect hard data because we want to try to protect our security of our members. But on the off, just back of the hand napkin math, I'd say about half and half,
Mm-hmm.
50% are trans, 50% are cis. And the goal of the organization is to create that strong network, but to join, you have to agree to our statement of beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
which is somewhat of a political document. It shouldn't be, but it is in today's, stuff like trans rights or human rights, Black Lives Matter. You should be able to do what you want with your own body and love who you
Mm-hmm.
love. And our actions have consequences. We should try to measure the impact of things we do and not waste our resources.
Yeah. Radical
And
stuff.
yeah, so radical. And yeah, I would say the willingness of people to come forward if you ask them. That's the issue, though. You have to ask because I think that there's almost kind of a bystander effect. Um, and if you just kind of shout into the void and say, "Hey, can someone help?" You might not get a lot of people because they're maybe thinking someone else will come up or they're like kind of nervous to help. But if you reach out to individuals privately, people are a lot more willing to help than you
Yeah.
think. Um, I'd also say that it's been surprising to me that there's a lot of resilience in the community, more than I thought too, in that there's a lot more people who think like I do, in that trans identity is not my whole identity and it's just kind of a descriptor of me.
Mm-hmm.
I am a non-binary person who loves finance, loves politics, so I'm boring, but has all these interests and everything, and it's just a portion of my identity,
Yeah.
not necessarily my whole identity. And so our community is very resilient too,
Mm-hmm.
which is awesome.
It is. It's awesome that it is. Unfortunate that it has to be.
Oh
And
yeah, it shouldn't.
yeah,
It shouldn't have to be,
yeah,
but
it's always the blend, right? All right, so you're helping, you know, queer professionals, trans professionals, and yes, and allies, but like allies are members, and the intent here is to help the folks, right? Get better positions, maybe get positions in the first place, elevate whatever their employment status is, right? And hell, sometimes maybe like their job is fine, but the environment sucks. Like the
yeah,
money's fine, whatever elevating the employment situation looks like for them, that's what we're out to accomplish here. So for any of those types of folks who are listening, watching now, right? So, and who are looking for whatever reason to find themselves in a better position, what, what advice can you give them?
yeah. I would say that it is difficult out there in the job market generally to find good jobs. Everyone has issues, and everyone's having a lot of issues. I'd say
Mm-hmm.
also we're somewhat at a disadvantage too as a community because a lot of jobs are gotten through referrals through your social and your professional network, and especially if you're recently transitioning, a lot of times people are disowned by their family, as an example, and you can't really rely and have the help of your family to be able to refer you for jobs too. And I would say that there are barriers and there's issues, but I would say that it is also very possible to find great organizations to work for. It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult because a lot of organizations don't really know how to tackle this issue, and the DEI space is very fragmented. So basically, all these companies are kind of running around blind. They're led by cis white men, most likely. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, we want to make a difference. Let me just hire someone who's a DI professional to help me do this one thing. But there's kind of a lack of a central database of best practices
Yeah.
for organizations. And so, for example, the company I work at, I'm not going to name it, but It's an older family company, and I'm pretty sure I'm like one of two transgender people or
Mhm.
something out of like 3,000 employees or whatever. But and they're kind of conservative socially, but they're good people. They're nice, and I was approached, for example, to in kind of a ham-handed way, saying, "Oh, they didn't say you're trans, but I'm open at work. I'm
Yeah.
out at work." But they were like, "Hey, we're trying to edit our documents to be more gender neutral. Do you want to like help with that?" And it's kind of like, "Sure, like yeah, sure, I'll help with that." And it's kind of just like a small little thing that way. And so I would say that people's identities don't necessarily make who they are. It's how they interact with people.
Hmm.
And my favorite example to share is my mom is Mormon
Hmm.
and my dad is atheist.
Mm.
Guess which one's more supportive of me? My mom.
Yeah.
And that's Mormonism. But it's almost in spite of an identity that she's supportive of me.
Hmm.
And so you'll find a lot that there's a lot of people who are good people. Don't try to blanket not speak to any type of any one person based on like identity alone. You
Yeah.
have to take a look at what they're doing in kind of a context that they're in.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. Also keep trying, because literally it's like every job that you apply for, you have like a 1% chance of getting or something.
Yeah.
And so it's literally just a numbers game. And so you just have to play the game,
Yeah.
which sucks.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The numbers might be a little higher, a little more daunting, but it's still numbers, right? All the more reason to have a network to turn to, since that's where the gigs come from anyway, right?
Yeah.
On our last episode, I was talking with Madison Butler, and she's in the DEI space and trying to like and build it in, kind of like what you said, right? Like versus just doing like, hey, here's a workshop. This is handled now, right? But like building that into the actual DNA of organizations,
Yeah.
but also recognizing that like you need a space. You need your own community, and the workplace is great. And sometimes, it's beyond that because, in both of our cases, we realized like, yeah, no, we didn't get any of the gigs that we've had lately because we were fucking applying into certain things, right? There is a benefit to community that we all
Exactly.
know, and it feels harsh when you don't have that in place, right? So it all is nepotism, and it's all this, and it's that alienation shit again, right? Like when you don't have a network, it's like, fuck, I'm on the outside and I got to play this game and it's me against and so like the opportunity here is like there's a network, right?
Yeah,
There's like,
exactly. And this is very rose tinted lens of the
yeah,
world
yeah,
and very simplified view of the world too. But I think that there is some truth in that. Literally watch an ants or a Bug's Life or
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
from Pixar. It's we're
mhm,
stronger together,
yeah,
and that's what it is.
yeah,
We're able to diversify our efforts and build towards a common goal,
right,
whether that's at Trans Rally or if it's a local community organization or whatever.
yeah,
That's essentially what I'm just trying to do, is on a national basis at least,
yeah. You're building a
using that
certain
system.
kind of us, right? So for an us that maybe isn't included in the larger us or hasn't historically, then the opportunity here is to build the network. Join some. They've already started. Trans Rally's already started. There's some of that flavor in the Pink Slingshot project, right? There's all sorts of things that I do in my off time that like like there's stuff happening, and there's stuff to be created that's not quite happening yet. But that's what there is to do, is to add to, build, and join networks for us, and get strength from each other.
And I would say too, another thing, and this is I think very important too. My advice is to also have hobbies. And it's very simple advice, I guess, but it's kind of like dating
Mhm.
in that if you try to find somebody to date and that's your intention, then you kind of attract people who that's also their intention.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's not the best.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a hobby or a community that's not necessarily tied to a certain identity, it's more of like an activity,
Yeah.
then you might be able to find people who are, could be better friends,
Hmm.
as an example too. And segmentation, I think, is an important as well, just by different interests and everything like that. That's one of the things we want to do in the future, as we grow, because our purpose is to get people connected to good paying jobs.
Yeah.
That's kind of what our purpose is right now.
Hmm.
But in the future, the larger purpose is to empower economically our members and to help do business with each other and lift each other up.
Hmm.
Um, and but if the goal was to build a community, then it's almost kind of self-serving, and you can kind of be led astray in that way, because it could be the incentives could be, all right, well, we just need warm bodies, so let's try to do crazy marketing things or
Yeah.
whatever, and not really have a soul of
Hmm.
the org. And so, yeah, I would just say that that's important too, in many aspects, but
Yeah.
also socially.
Yeah, personal, having some richness to your life, hobbies, interests, right? Things you pursue, and then yes, the semi inadvertent. I mean, it's a network. It's a network built around something, right? All communities are built actually around something.
Mhm.
And so in that case, it might be the whatever, cross stitch
Yeah,
network or something, and then you find a different opportunity, right? Or you go and you help something and you volunteer for something, and then you meet people, and then what do you know, some opportunity shows up, which, yeah, in business development they've known for years, right? That's the sponsoring of events, that's the people showing up and doing different things, and then you build these relationships. I was in a community association for years, and like all these kind of business things kind of fell out of it. Like that's not what I was doing there, right? Like we were there to do certain things, but either way, you are growing relationships, you are growing a network, without a specific focus and an affinity for one another. And so when things pop up, then here come those referrals back and forth.
yeah, exactly. And for
And
rich
you're a
people
more
and like
interesting person
executives and
to bring it back to the
yeah, and
date.
like
Yeah.
I hate golf. I hate golf.
Mhm.
I don't like golf. But that's what it's used for. For like
Yeah.
executives and for really rich people,
Yeah.
it's an activity to focus on, to
Mhm.
bring people together. So and then whatever comes up from that comes up from that. Same thing with skiing a lot of times and like retreat, whatever, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
that's what they do. And that's one of the ways that a lot of business gets done. Unfortunately, bad business a lot of times that negatively affect us.
Yeah, bad business and bad
But
environment, but that's how it's getting done. So you can do that, you can join that, or you can do your own thing, and you'll have the similar experience, right? Whether it's the cross stitch or something else, or you create your own thing. I know I used to create way back
Dungeons and
in the day.
Dragons.
I used to, yes, there you go. D&D. When I started, when I first put out a LinkedIn post about ping slingshot well in advance of having anything branded around it, like looking for orgs. One of the people that did reach out was some group of people that was doing like Dungeons and Dragons for corporate team development kind of shit. I think they're in the UK or something, which was hilarious and amazing. And they were not, they were allies, right? But they were not like queer folks of any kind. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
this is a specific thing for that. But like I spent 30 minutes on a Zoom with them anyway. Like I knew that they weren't, and I was just like, all right, cool, but you can pick my brain if you want, and like we can riff, because that's what I've always found has worked for me. That helps the
Mhm.
professional network too, when you're just kind of always willing to like give whatever you have. But like, yeah, find a D&D, or I used to make up my own networking groups because I hated going to those networking groups, like the BNI early morning, fucking weird, militarized kind of like things, or just the mixers, and you wander around and just kind of gravitate towards the corner and drink yourself into a coma. I mean, it's like,
And that's the thing too. And it's that the self-interest with that, it's hard. And it's kind of the same way with LinkedIn in some ways too, in that it's kind of a transaction. Everyone's kind of in it for themselves. So it
yep,
is a skill to learn to provide value for people, and kind of a, hey, I'll do this for you, you do this for me kind of thing. And that's how the world works in some ways too.
yep,
But having a reason to get together that's not just networking is very
yep.
important. because you don't have to try to work towards the goal of networking.
Right.
And so that's a thing, because
Yeah.
it also attracts certain people too. You might not even want to network with.
Right.
So I'm sure you have many
Most.
examples.
Yeah, that's a reason you end up in the corner. And it's not just
Yeah,
shyness
exactly.
or like, whatever fucking neurodivergence in their way. It's just I don't want anything to do with any of these people, right? And so yeah, so definitely, yeah, find some other things, some other networks to create or join that aren't just about, hey, look at me, I'm networking kind of a thing. Like do shit you actually enjoy doing, and then you will find some other people around it. All right, cool. So in wrapping this up, what's the last bit? You get to close us out basically, right? So what is one thing that you would like to share or say about Trans Rally, or about, to whoever might be like watching or listening? What do you want to end on, and then tell us where to find you?
Yeah. So I'd say that what we're trying to build is a national and in the future international community, and it's free to join. And I would say that what we really need is support, and we need people to join because we're only really as strong as our community. Our goal is to, as an organization, serve our members. And right now, I serve about 240 members. Right now, we're not sustainable financially,
Mhm.
but we're very close to being sustainable financially. And our goal is to negotiate with organizations in order to empower our members. So, for example, we're partnering with Plume, which is a hormone replacement therapy company that serves people nationwide, as well as folks. And hopefully we can derive some benefits from them for our members with our scale. And what we're trying to do is to provide, it's almost an alternative to the current system that exists in society. And it's a big goal. And honestly, we've already helped 4 or 5 or 6 people get jobs. So we're already successful in my book, but we are only as strong as our community. And we serve our community too.
Mhm.
So just wanted to let you know you can join transrally.org. It's free to join. And if you do have, assets, if you've been successful and if you support our goals and our mission and you believe in what we're trying to do, please become a sponsor member too. It's $4 a month or more, depending on how much you're able to give. But we're trying to basically empower our members, providing services and connecting people for a strong network nationwide. Because, there are people in rural areas who their safe place may be Starbucks, and that's it. And we're trying to bring people together,
Mhm.
especially in the digital world we live in today. That states don't really mean anything. They do, obviously, and like it's good to live in a state that respects your identity. But I'm saying just they are imaginary lines.
Mhm.
They're very important imaginary lines, but they're imaginary lines. And I would say too, the second call to action or whatever, get involved. Even if you don't want to get involved with Trans Rally, whatever, but just find something, because there's good work that's being done on a local level. And in any capacity, if you have certain skills, talents, for example, the Human Rights Campaign, they only have 52, $53 million of revenue each year, and they have to dance for it every year. And they're a very effective organization. And the time we've been speaking, Apple has probably made $30 billion in profit or something. And so the scale is just completely different. And
Mhm.
everything that you do matters. So I would say try to build a community locally if you can, because there's, possibly a lot more people around you that would be open to it. And those networks are so very important for us.
Yeah. Cool. And transrally.org.
Yep, transrally.org. I'm mostly on LinkedIn because I'm boring. We also have a Facebook, we have an Instagram, we have a TikTok. I should post more on TikTok. Also, our community, most of those on Discord right now. Like I said, we have 240 members of Trans Rally. And yeah, just trying to grow and be sustainable.
Nice, nice. Well, you're doing great work, and obviously there's some work to do to get it to take hold and be sustainable. But so far so good. And yeah, I will throw in the direct. You mentioned it, the $4 or more, right? But so for all the folks, as this will be hitting in July, and then there will be an 11 whole months of the year where it's not Pride Month, but of course, like we're queer all year. And so for all the folks who want to support, and I know because I got multiple messages after putting up a post about this about like, well, can I still join and throw in some money? You know, like I'm not,
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, there is a line on the website, but like, let me emphasize this a little harder. Like, and so, yeah,
yeah,
so if you want to support, of course, we want members, like actual members who need some help and support. But if you want to come, you want to mentor and like, for the cost of, I think, less of some kind of fucking Starbucks frilly drink like every
yeah,
month, right? It's like the classic
yeah,
pitch for less than the cost of a cup of coffee a month. You can like actually actively support the trans community in a way that goes way beyond some fucking rainbow washed logo or
yeah,
some hashtag repost of something, right? So like $4 or like 3 minutes to sign up, $4 a month at least for some period of time will go a long way towards like real impact. So I don't think that can be understated.
yeah. And I would say too, if you have questions or anything like that, it's a situation where my email, Devin,
Mhm.
DEVIN at transrally.org. I also have a business phone number,
Mhm.
253-693-0000. Exene and I text. So like my phone is open, my email is open. I know I'm kind of exposing myself for risk here or whatever, but I don't really care. I try to take the approach that I'm open to collaboration.
Mhm.
But also, it's a situation where it is kind of right now a one person band. I'm doing this.
Mhm.
And so there are some limitations with that. And right now we are not financially sustainable. But whenever we do become financially sustainable, any additional funds that we're able to raise on a monthly basis can be reinvested. And you can do so much with so little
Yeah.
these days. And so once we are financially sustainable, you'll be seeing a lot more
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
Because even $100 a month or something, if we have that in the bank, then like that's one or two extra services we can provide for people.
Mhm.
And so it's very direct impact. It's just trying to get there, and it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah. And the journey continues.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're here to stay. Also, so July 6th is the release date. Maybe if you celebrate red, white, and blue, why not pink, white, and blue too?
Mm. There it is. There it is. Those colors, like I did a play off of the Easter vibe, right? With those colors and like the red,
Yeah,
white, and blue now. That's great. That's good shit. All right, Devin. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate what you do, and we'll talk soon.
you too. Thanks
Cool.
for watching.
Yeah.